Welcome to the third episode of the Economy and State podcast. I'm your host, Benjamin Sievers.
I'm here again. I'm Sam Brandhoover.
All right, and today we're going to talk about the debates that just happened that was between Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden, and
Right.
there was no crowd.
No crowd, yeah. I'm sure we both have initial takeaways. I'd like to point out that I think for the most part I was right with my predictions yesterday.
Yeah. For the most part, we were right. Biden really went against Sanders on this, and Bernie really couldn't defend himself and fall back on the crowd. There were a lot of times where if there were a crowd, they would have clapped and cheered and would have helped him. But
there was no interruption. There was nothing stopping Biden from attacking him.
There were points where Sanders would go on the clear attack. Then after Biden was just like, no, I didn't do that. Sanders just kind of like sheepishly backed down and just kind of retreated.
I think rules were enforced the least this debate as well.
Mm-hmm.
There was very clearly no time limit on multiple questions that there should have been based on the rules that were laid out beforehand, but I guess it played to Biden's advantage in that way, though.
Yes, it did, and there's a lot of cutting in too, yeah. But I think the one thing that neither of us could have really predicted was the really pro-Sanders approach that the moderators took. It wasn't explicit, of course, but they clearly favored him in a lot of instances. But at the same time, it didn't really stop Biden or hamper him in any way.
Yeah, I remember telling you that. I can't remember a specific instance, but there was definitely multiple times where I remember saying out loud, wow, that's a very pro-Bernie question right there.
Yeah, they're definitely more polarized on this, which it makes sense. We're in the primaries, but let's get into.
Yeah. So as for the debate in itself, I think the number one thing that they started with, it was the main.
And they concluded with.
With the coronavirus.
Yeah.
Which I think is insane.
Yeah, it doesn't deserve as much publicity as it's getting. I mean, it's already has taken adequate attention from the public.
Yeah, the moderator in the beginning gave this. I don't think you were there for that.
No, I wasn't.
She gave a fear-mongering statement, which was 6,000 people have already died from the coronavirus, implying that was like a huge number. And there were statistics given by Candace later that were just made that statistic look so small.
Yes.
Like 6,000 compared to like 30,000 dying from just. What was that statistic? I don't know. But regardless, it's just a small statistic. It was just so clearly biased in the wrong way. Like, every actual credible media source is saying right now, like, don't make it a big deal. It's not actually as big of a deal as the government, at least, is making it out to be. And they just completely went off the rails with it, making it look like it's the worst pandemic ever.
Yeah, and I wanted to touch on something. It's more about Bernie, but I find it perplexing of how someone can go from looking at the issues caused by coronavirus and saying, oh, therefore we need universal health care. I saw that a lot leading up to the debate, like prior, and then I saw it during the debate. I'm like, how can you, it's such a logical chasm that you just need to, that you need a lot more in between to actually say we need universal health care because of this. It's just kind of ridiculous.
Well, I mean,
it's politics. It's plain politics.
Yeah, it's definitely not a conclusion that he thought out a lot. It's definitely just a fallback that he has. And I told you while we were watching, Bernie Sanders is very much so a single-issue candidate.
Oh, yeah,
and, so, I mean, it wasn't just that question. There were multiple questions where he falls back on universal health care. So it's not crazy to understand why he would do that, but obviously the logic doesn't work out, which is it supposed to? You tell me.
Yeah, but there's obviously... In some cases, there's obviously much more in between the conjoined arguments and positions, but in that I think it's just disingenuous. Then there were instances where, as I said earlier, there were instances where Biden would just shut him down. Can you think of any there was one about the Defense of Marriage Act when. Bernie went after him saying, "Oh, you voted for that," and Biden just
it wasn't that. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I think he was talking about the Hyde Amendment, or wait, that
yes, the Hyde Amendment. Yeah, then he just said no. I mean, everyone everyone voted for it at one point.
Bernie asked him 4 times in a row, regardless of any answer, it was just, did you vote yes for the Hyde Amendment? And and he, say it here right now for the American people.
Yeah, and he's like, yeah, well, everyone did. Yeah, but I also thought it was funny how, like, I think you mentioned this too, that Biden went on the offensive and said, oh, Bernie, well, you voted for this bill, and Sanders was like, well, we could stay here all day talking about the bills that we voted
we can make points all day about who voted for what, even though Bernie was the one to bring up voting records in the first place.
Yeah, like, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah,
and
couldn't win his own game. That's what that was.
And the other thing I thought, just a small thing to touch on, was the $1.5 trillion that the Fed pumped into the economy, and how they said, the moderators asked, oh, the Fed did this, but what would you do? What more would you do? It's sad. It's sad that the question isn't, was it right to pump $1.5 trillion into the economy? The question is, okay, here's what we did. Yeah. What more would you do than that?
And before Donald Trump, there used to be a balance. I mean, yeah, Democrats would be the ones advocating for a federal, the Fed to introduce $1.5 trillion.
Yes.
And now it's the Democrats saying, what more can we do on top of just creating $1.5 trillion out of thin air?
Yeah. And it's unfortunate because they could be going on the offensive on this against Trump. They could be using this as something to hold up against him, but they're not. They're agreeing with him. It just kind of legitimizes Trump's approach to the whole situation.
It's funny, actually. Republicans, or normal Republicans, obviously not me, but Republicans think that Donald Trump is so far right and so opposite of Democrats, when in reality, in the debate we just saw, there was like at least 3 issues, including the one we're talking about right now, where they actually had to inadvertently agree with Donald Trump.
Yeah,
it was Donald Trump's reaction to coronavirus, and like I told you while we were watching, Joe Biden's entire response that he gave is literally just every single thing that Donald Trump did.
Yeah,
and not only that, just everything with the Fed rates and the pumping $1.5 trillion into the banks, right?
Yeah.
That in itself, they just inadvertently had to agree with him, and it's kind of insane that Republicans think it's a good thing that.
Yeah, and they're going to have problems in November when they try to pull the economy against Trump, and Trump's just like, look, I did everything all of you said was right back when it first happened. But of course, that's not foreseeing how bad the economy can get in the future and future dips and how he can weasel his way out of that. But that's for a future episode, I guess, to discuss the failing economy.
I mean, I certainly have more opinions, but
yes,
right, both do. So for next, do you want to talk about the big announcement?
About Biden having confirmed that his running mate
is going to be a woman. Yes.
Yeah.
That was probably the biggest takeaway from that debate that I had, when as soon as he said that, I immediately started doing research on who it could be.
Yeah.
And I formed a comprehensive list. So
let's go through the list.
All right.
There's some on this list that are obviously like less likely to be a candidate than others.
I have 14 individuals, technically 15, I guess. But I have Kirsten Gillibrand on here, but I don't think she's going to be.
Yeah. We don't think. I mean, Sam, you explained it before.
Yeah. So essentially, Kirsten Gillibrand has not endorsed anybody since she dropped out, which in itself would argue that she could be considered as a Biden vice presidential candidate. However, the fact that she hasn't endorsed anybody is probably because the New York primaries haven't occurred yet, of which she's a senator. So, given that she is not endorsing someone based off of who wins the New York primary, probably means she hasn't been tapped for any vetting process, because she obviously would have endorsed Biden right away if anyone had ever talked to her about being a vice presidential candidate. So, it's clearly probably not going to be her.
Probably not her. There's more obvious choices on the list.
So I have, like I said, I have 14 individuals that are either current or formal officials that have endorsed Biden, and I've reduced that to 4 individuals that specifically have a key advantage in some way. So Amy Klobuchar, that's who I think it's going to be.
Yes, definitely. Almost definitely.
She provides a strategic advantage with being from Minnesota.
Yeah.
And not only that, I also have Tina Smith is the other senator from Minnesota. I just included her just because Minnesota being the strategic, geographic advantage, and also being a woman that endorsed it. I mean, there aren't as many as you would think. I also have Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Yeah.
She's from Florida. She's pretty experienced, and she has a lot of nationwide popularity already.
You'd have to do some convincing with me though for that one. But I would say Klobuchar Klobuchar can much more easily relate to conservatives and moderates.
You're right, but at the same time, it has been strategy in former campaigns to choose someone that hasn't been on the campaign trail yet.
Yes.
So if we have to get rid of those people, I mean, Amy Klobuchar is gone. If we're being honest, you're not going to choose Tina Smith if you're not going to choose Amy Klobuchar. So that being said, there isn't anyone else on my list that really has any strategic advantage. That's why I would say Debbie Wasserman Schultz hasn't been on the campaign yet, so it's completely unaffected by any type of scandal, anything recently. She was an early endorser of Biden. She's from Florida, which is a swing state, so
yeah.
I think, it's a very strong possibility. We talked about this before, I had Pelosi as the fourth one, and only because I don't think it would be smart, and I don't think there's much advantage to it. However, she did commit to not running for speaker again.
Yeah.
And not very many individuals go from being speaker to nothing, or to just being a normal congressional candidate.
Yeah.
Right? So it would be... Yeah, so I have her on there just as a strong possibility because I think she has more of a chance than... I mean, she at least has some national recognition.
And I think it is also beneficial for at least the Democratic Party as a whole to not take a senator out of the Senate to be the vice president pick. I mean, it might be more...
you would also have to make the argument, though, that... I mean, Joe Biden... for someone that has to run on some form of unity, it would make sense if Joe Biden were to choose somebody that... legitimate, like he knew already, and he only I mean, he was in the Senate. Not to say that they don't, people don't get around, but it would make more sense if someone, in the Senate were to be just. I mean, and you can look at historical precedent. I mean, Barack Obama chose Joe Biden because they knew each other from the Senate.
Yeah.
Again, I mean,
and
John McCain didn't know Sarah Palin, so
Klobuchar has made a concentrated effort to get Biden elected,
right?
And it's not like they had too many fights.
Can I float one more person to you?
Yeah, sure.
Barbara Boxer. What do you think?
I don't know.
Really? I thought that was a strong because
she hasn't been relevant. I mean, at all.
Well, that's the point.
Yeah.
I mean, she's someone with nationwide recognition that is not tainted in any way by the entire race so far.
Yes.
Because my first thought when I was evaluating Kamala Harris was that, like, oh, well, she was not an early supporter of Joe Biden. She's still, it's questionable whether she even likes Joe Biden, right? But then I thought, like, oh, well, from California, Barbara Boxer is just so much of a better... I mean, I would say Barbara Boxer has a better chance than Kamala Harris.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I can't say that.
Okay. Regardless, I would say, you can add on in here, right? My key three components that I would look at, just generally, and you can tell me who you think fits this. Age, demographic, and geographic advantage, right?
Klobuchar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you need someone, the ideal candidate, since it has to be a woman, right? Is someone younger, because you always have to look for a vice presidential candidate that has traits that you don't have, right? That's why Barack Obama chose an old white man, That's why John McCain chose a woman, I guess
a much more conservative woman too,
Yeah, and Trump, I mean, Trump didn't have the evangelical crowd until Pence was on board. And plus, diversity doesn't matter as much in the Republican Party. But in the Democratic Party, it matters more. So, anyways, age, Joe Biden's really freaking old. So, youngest you can find with the most experience, that's going to be, a nice equilibrium to find. Demographic, as in... minority status, something like that. So I'm talking like Latino, African American, even Asian, and geographic advantage. Obviously, the reason why Mike Pence was chosen was, to win Ohio. So, Indiana.
Obviously,
Indiana. Yeah. Yes, I mean there was other reasons for Mike Pence, but that was an advantage to Mike
Yeah.
Pence.
Oh, I can tell you who it's definitely not going to be. Two people. I know it's not going to be Hillary Clinton, and I know it's not going to be Elizabeth Warren. Like I've heard people half jokingly, half seriously say Hillary Clinton's going to be chosen as vice president, but that would just be stupid. She's just unpopular. Same thing with Elizabeth Warren. She couldn't win her own state. I mean, both those candidates, they're just both unlikable. It's not going to be either of them. So I'm just dispelling that right now before someone says it's going to be one of them, because it's almost definitely not going to be.
You know, I would make the. I mean, I'm not saying that this is likely, but I could just to make a counter argument to that. Elizabeth Warren is a senator, which automatically just adds some.
I see what you're gonna say. She's progressive,
but
she's
not only that. For someone that needs to take votes from a specific Bernie Sanders, it's not crazy to choose a candidate that endorses you, and second of all, whose voters statistically switch to Bernie Sanders the most. So, if your goal is to take Bernie Sanders' demographics and to, which, I mean, then you can make another counter argument to what I just said and say, why does it need to take Bernie Sanders votes?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you could also make the argument that, Joe Biden is going to need to bring out voters that don't normally vote, and Bernie Sanders supporters do that. It's a long trail.
Yeah, you're right. And, I mean, but I think a problem is she's also holding out. She hasn't endorsed anybody. Her own primaries have happened already. I mean, I see really no reason other than maybe she's in the talks of beginning a vice presidential pick, and that's why she's holding out. But at the same time, I mean,
it could be maybe both of them are vetting her.
I don't know. That could be possible too. But I mean, at the same time, I don't really see it as a wise move. I mean, they're both. She's just unpopular and unlikable. And
well, if you were to choose a vice presidential candidate based off of two factors, which are she needs to be it needs to be a woman, and who in the primary races is a woman that's garnered the most votes so far, it would be Elizabeth Warren. She did beat Amy Klobuchar in almost every primary. So, if those were your two deciding factors, it would be Elizabeth Warren. So I'm not. That's why I don't want to completely negate the entire possibility of her being the candidate, but. I mean, there are.
I guess there's a higher possibility than what I initially thought, but I really don't think it will be. And I don't know. I think a Klobuchar is a much more solid pick and someone who is more likely to be chosen. I don't know. We could be surprised next week or whenever he announces. I don't know why I said next week, but
usually they don't announce until the nominating convention, so it probably won't be for a while. Or you could pull Ted Cruz and announce your vice presidential nominee really early, but I mean that's more of a last ditch attempt than a strategical thing to do.
Or if you're not really running against anybody. But all right.
But I mean, I'm just saying at this point it would be probably more cannon fodder than anything to announce a vice presidential nominee this early.
Yeah,
because it just adds another target for a Sanders campaign, which both undermines your decision and of course just gives more of a thing. And I also want to apologize for any sounds that you might be hearing.
Yeah, there's a lot of explosions and noises and crazy stuff going on outside this room, and we can't control that, and it's just been constant. So if we wanted to record after the debate, we had no choice. But is there anything else you want to talk about regarding the debate?
I guess overall, I talked to you during the debate about this. It's very interesting to just understand that, Biden and Bernie have one huge difference, which is that Joe Biden will take progress in any form, right? And Bernie Sanders will not accept anything unless it is exactly what he wants. And that, if you understand that, you can understand 99% of what Bernie Sanders does. And, and Joe Biden, of course. But, has Joe Biden voted for a bill that has a part in it that doesn't support something that's strictly Democratic agenda? Of course, because any normal senator has.
Yeah, and it's not even about compromise either. I mean, it's more about Biden has clear goals that logically and will lead to what Bernie wants, and aren't even compromising. They're just working their way towards it, and Sanders is even against that stuff. That's not enough. It's never enough.
I know.
I mean, it's possible to get a public option passed. I would say that's very possible. But I mean, to pass universal health care, you're gonna have to pull a lot more strings to even have people consider that.
Those are strings that I don't think Bernie Sanders has. He doesn't even caucus. I mean, I'm sorry. He caucuses with the Democratic Party, but he isn't even in the Democratic Party. Nobody likes him in the Senate.
And people are polarized, are even going to get more polarized against him if he can, as he continues his campaign. I mean, how bad can it possibly get for him?
Yeah,
I don't know. It's just not a good position for him to be in. And if he were to become president somehow, I mean, it'd just be like him getting nothing done ever, unless it's through pen and phone. I mean, it's just gonna be so difficult.
Yeah. What's interesting, I mean, Ben and I have the aftermath of the debate on CNN right now, and I'm just looking. They're reminding us of a part in the debate where Bernie Sanders says we need to shut this president up right now regarding his response to coronavirus, and I just think that's so hypocritical because both of their responses are the exact same thing that Donald Trump has done.
Yeah.
And at the same time, they want to completely, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just stating. So this is not completely relevant.
But again, they want more. It's never enough. It's never enough. But yeah, I think we've covered everything we want to talk about regarding the debates. I had something I wanted to quickly talk about that's unrelated to debate, but something I think that people should become aware of. And it is a new internet regulation called the Earn It Act. And it essentially puts the internet at the whim of a board that writes rules for private messaging and data sharing in the internet, and it mandates that all private messages go through a federally created and regulated and sanctioned program. So
just imagine the word censorship is basically what I'm hearing.
Censorship, and your data is going to slow down. I mean, yeah. So, I was hopeful, like, when Trump announced he was going to get rid of net neutrality, and not really him announcing it, but his administration announcing it, under Ajit Pai's rule of the FCC, I was hopeful. I was hopeful that we might be entering an age of internet deregulation. I thought that it wasn't that big of a point to push for that, and it wouldn't affect him very politically in the long run, because nobody talks about net neutrality anymore. I was hoping that he would actually have the guts to do something about it, to deregulate it. But this bill is getting bipartisan support in the committee. It hasn't gone through Congress yet. I thought it did, but I was wrong about that. It didn't go through Congress yet, but it has bipartisan support, and it will likely be signed into law by the president. So this will essentially, and plus it also expands the definition of child pornography to child abuse images or whatever, and that is
such a broad definition.
And that can be used to censor. Like, I've seen questionable things on the internet. I think we've all have.
Yeah.
We've seen questionable images that aren't like, you could say pornographic in nature. But
the first thing that comes to my mind, you remember that show Toddlers and Tiaras?
Yeah,
you could say that entire show is child abuse.
I've seen stuff like that, resembling that could be considered child abuse that people have posted, and I mean, you could report that. And one of the major talking points in this committee hearing that they talked about was Facebook had 15.8 billion reports of child abuse images and posts, while Amazon only had 8. Okay. I see a problem with this because Amazon itself is not a mainstream, highly used place where people could possibly share child abuse images. And if they were shared, their photo sharing program is not public. It's private. It's private between people. So, I mean, it's completely different. And people, for the most part, pedophiles aren't on Amazon. They're on places like Kik or dating websites or maybe Facebook. And
yeah, Ben certainly understands that more than I do.
Yeah, and yes, but yeah,
I don't know why.
Okay, yeah, but the thing about this is it reminds me of what's that? I'm blanking on the name of that first. MySpace. This is MySpace.
Yeah.
All the pedophiles were on MySpace. Then there's a big effort to kick all the pedophiles off MySpace. Once they did it, guess where all the pedophiles went? They went back on MySpace under different accounts. So this bill also has like a legal component to it. They want to sue these people, but at the same time, I mean, once you start suing people once these big companies start suing people, and like the first few pedophiles get hit, well, all the pedophiles will just go somewhere else because they know, oh, now they're taking it seriously. Just kind of like they did with Craigslist after Craigslist took personals off. They went somewhere else.
I think, so just at least something to note, though, is that, even before any talk of this bill, or even, I wouldn't even say there is much talk of it, but, maybe you can tell me, has there ever really been a problem with online media actually like not regulating its own content? Because I've seen over-regulating.
There isn't really an issue. The main issue they were talking about was reporting. People reporting stuff. And Facebook naturally had a lot more people reporting things. Not necessarily instances of... I've reported things before, like that could have been considered child abuse on Facebook, or like images of that. And I mean, I could see how someone might say it wasn't, that's the type of stuff that people are. That's the other group of people who are reporting. The people who are unsure, they just report it anyway. I mean, that's what, because like if the debate was all about actual instances of child abuse, this bill wouldn't even be considered, because child abuse is falling, child rape is falling, instances of violent crimes and crimes involving children, they're falling, and they don't mention that. They didn't mention that at all during this debate, and I think that brings us to why this bill is actually being considered, and that is because there's obviously a lot of favoritism towards Facebook in the whole committee hearing. They continuously praised Facebook throughout the entire thing. They praised WhatsApp, which they didn't even say it was part of Facebook, owned by Facebook. They praised WhatsApp for how they handled it. Praised Facebook for how they handled it. But they attacked Amazon, Twitter, Google,
and Amazon isn't even known for.
Yeah, it's not even like commonly used for. It's like you order stuff through Amazon. You don't share photos like you do on Facebook. And and there's a woman who I have her name written down, Mrs. Banker, who, when she spoke, she was speaking in favor of all the industries that the committee was targeting, and she kept getting shut down. They wouldn't even let her speak. And there's another issue with this. The private companies right now are banned from using AIs to monitor this stuff. Like, it's impossible to have, like, a group of people look at everything. Right now, they're banned from that. I didn't even know that until the committee hearing. And this bill, I think, I'm not sure. I think it opens up that possibility, so it would help companies comply with this law. But I mean, it's kind of weird how their first course of action isn't to allow private companies to use AI instead of going straight for this massive regulatory body. Yeah, and one final note: it will just make it harder for smaller businesses to actually do anything. I mean, we've learned it's about regulatory capture. It's essentially a big business
self-regulating its own industry.
Yeah, self-regulating so that they can push smaller businesses out in order to get more market share. And that's what all this is about. It's not about protecting kids, just as the committee, the chairman and the people on the committee had said. They said, oh, I can't even see how people could go against this bill because children are awesome and they're the future. And that's all they said. And it's just embarrassing. And that's all I want to say about that. All right, is there anything else you would like to add, Sam?
Nope.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for listening to our episode, and I hope everyone has a nice night, and stay safe.